Welcome back to the Melbourne Catholic website. Lovely that you've joined us. We talked to some really interesting, amazing people. And today's guest, Netty Horton, the new CEO of CatholicCare, fits that bill just perfectly. Netty, welcome.
Thank you very much, Shane. Lovely to be here.
And lovely to have you with us. CatholicCare is an amazing organisation. We'll talk a little bit about it. And then I'd like also for us to concentrate in this chat with all the great work you're doing with the refugees and asylum seekers, a lot of whom have been at Eltham, and we're now looking to move them into new accommodation. So we'll come to that. But what about CatholicCare in general? It's an amazing organisation. You've probably had long enough now to get a bit of a feel for it.
Yes, well, I've been here about 5 months, and obviously as part of my orientation, if you like, I've been out to all of our programs, and I have found some great projects, some of which I knew about and some of which I knew nothing about. So, and one of the areas that, as you know, and that we're talking about today, is our work with refugees and asylum seekers, which is really incredible. And I think the great thing that I have noticed is, how supported the people that we work with have felt, and how they're able to move into the community and really create a sort of sustainable, ongoing community life, which is obviously critical when you're new to a country.
Of course. So we'll come back to those guys and ladies in a moment. Your background, you've spent most of your adult life in the community sector. You've got a wealth of experience.
Yes, I'm very proud of the fact that I've spent all of my working life in the community sector. I think that brings about expertise and values that are really important, and hopefully we can make great contributions to the community. But most of my background has really been in the area of homelessness,
yes.
Working lots with homeless people, ranging from riding my bike in my first job around the parks of Melbourne, finding people sleeping out, and then I've also worked a lot in housing and probably developed much more into social policy and really trying to change the systems in our community to try and make things better for very vulnerable and disadvantaged people. I'm
speaking to Netty Horton. She's the CEO of CatholicCare. Netty, 2018. There's a mayoral race on, and one of the candidates is even talking about the homelessness situation. Are we in a bind? Are we in a situation that is just not going to be able to get better, or do you see hope?
I have to see hope, because I guess I've devoted a lifetime of
yes.
trying to make things better. And I think if I reflect on a few decades, we certainly have seen improvements. But I think the key issue, not only for homeless people, but actually for many in the community now, is around access to housing and affordable housing. But unfortunately, the people that we see on the streets are people that need housing, and they also need a lot of support, a range of complex needs. And I actually think Australia can end homelessness if it wants to, but I think the question we have to ask of all of us, and certainly our governments and our institutions, is, do we really want to? Because I think once we say yes to that, we'll make a huge difference.
So are you, in a sense, saying there's not quite enough of a will at the government level?
I think we're not prepared to invest in affordable housing for people. It's very hard for people to make significant changes in their life, whether that's mental illness, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's very complicated histories, whether it's family violence. Very hard for people to make those changes if they haven't got anywhere to live. But we know that once we get people into sustainable accommodation, we get great outcomes for people who we can work with over a long period of time. And of course, if we can prevent homelessness or take people out of the homeless population, that actually saves the community a lot of money.
Yes.
It also saves a lot of effort, and it also means that the people that we're dealing with feel really good about themselves and can contribute, just like you and I hope.
And very much as Jesus would have asked, to absolutely try and fix those sorts of problems and be that sort of a community and those sort of people.
Yes, and I'm really glad you mentioned that, Shane, because I feel very privileged to be with CatholicCare, which I think is such an important part of the Archdiocese's work and reflects very much on the gospel teachings.
There was a great line in your CV that talks about how you love the mix of the values for you personally, professionally and spiritually. It's actually a very wonderful
yes.
thing, isn't it, to be able to have all those combining?
Yes, and I do feel, I think one thing that I would always say about my roles is I've been very fortunate in being able to combine pretty much everything that's important to me, which, I would suggest is not always available to everyone. So I feel I've been very lucky.
Well, let's take a mental drive out to the northeast of our great city. Eltham took around about, I think, 20 odd houses worth of refugees and asylum seekers, 40 to 50 odd people who've been there now for quite some time. And we're now in a situation where we're looking to move them from there, which I think was the original plan, into other housing. Talk us through where it's been and where it's going.
So I'm sure people will remember the terrible situation that some people who came here from Syria and Iraq found themselves in their own countries, and the terrible conditions and that they were exposed to. So we were very lucky in that we were able to work with St Vincent's Health Australia, who had taken over some premises, and they actually had units available for about an 18-month period before it was turned into aged care or independent living.
Yes.
And so we have been able to help some more than 40 families or individuals and families, 40 groups if you like, to actually find accommodation with us. We've been able to work with those people to try and give them opportunities in the community of Eltham. And so I was out there quite recently, and there is such a great community there, and there was a beautiful barbecue with all sorts of food from Arabic food, which was delicious, I've got to say. So I met with people, and what was interesting is all of the people there are trying very hard to find work.
Yes.
The ones that are able to work. All of the people there were trying hard to learn English because they see that learning English is their passport to success in the community.
Without a doubt, yes.
And it was really lovely. I met some of the children who have been placed in schools, in local schools, and of course their English is actually
improving.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, it was great, and the children already feel part of the community. So now that time for that housing is coming to an end. We've had some great outcomes in that anyone over 55 is going to be able to stay in that accommodation.
Okay. Yes.
But we have around about 18 families who we now need to try and find permanent housing for. And of course, some people are really trying to stay around the Eltham area or on the train line.
And that's understandable.
If their children are in schools,
of course,
they've made that big move. And so we are, and then other people are wanting to move to other suburbs where maybe there are more, perhaps some people that they know or people from their area that they originally came from. What we are looking for is people, actually, volunteers, who would be prepared to work with a particular family and help them as they sort of go through the motions of trying to find accommodation and of trying to move and trying to settle into their new and hopefully permanent community. I think it would be a very rewarding role. I've met the people that the families and the individuals out there, so I know that they are so grateful and so responsive to to people's efforts. And I think we're really asking people for about 4 or 5 months for possibly 2 to 3 hours a week. And the sorts of things we're asking people to do is to really help go through those forms that you need to fill out to get accommodation, perhaps to be phoning up other agencies or working with other groups who might be able to provide assistance. So if people have got time, we would be really pleased to hear from them. And of course, the volunteers aren't left on their own. They're looked after too, and we would assist people and work with them to make sure that they knew what they were doing. But I do feel very strongly that everyone has a gift, and everyone has got unique parts of their personality, and I think that's where that relationship between volunteers and, in this case, these families can really shine through, and hopefully volunteers can be a part of a lifelong impression on some of these refugee and asylum seeker families.
So Netty, there are thousands upon thousands of people who watch us through the Melbourne Catholic website, and what are we specifically asking? Are we asking people to help find a home for these refugees and asylum seekers, or more to take them down, if you like, a pathway of getting used to all the hurdles that they're going to confront, or is it both?
I think, Shane, it's a really good question. I think it's a bit of both. I think we are looking for people who actively will be able to assist in contacting real estate agents, maybe making links with local networks, searching for possible options. I have to say that finding accommodation is going to be the big issue,
yes.
But there will be other, families will have particular needs, so it might be linking into health services, whatever it is. So there's part of that. We are also looking for, if anyone knows of accommodation that might be suitable, if anyone has accommodation that they might be able to make available to these families, that would also be terrific. So I think what we're really trying to do is try and make sure that we can transition people into the community so that they can become part of that community.
Well, I'm with Netty Horton, the new CEO of CatholicCare. We're outside in the beautiful grounds of St Patrick's Cathedral here in East Melbourne. There's a little bit of ambient noise that you may be hearing, but that's the beauty of this magnificent spot. And we've even had a few drops of rain, Netty, but we've been able to battle through. But look, it's wonderful work that you're doing. I hope you get some responses to what you've put out today, because this is so important for these people, so their acclimatisation process can successfully continue, and that's really what we're talking about. And I hope we might be able to talk another time more about the broad issue of homelessness. It's not something that can just be fixed in one fell swoop. It's a process, and it's a lot of work that needs to go on. Do you have a final comment to our people watching this today, and how would they get in touch?
Firstly, people just should get in touch with us at CatholicCare, and even if it's just to explore a little bit or find out a little bit more about whether you think this would be something that you would be interested in doing, that would be terrific. And I would just like to take the opportunity. I mean, CatholicCare has, as I found out, it has so many great supporters out there in our parishes and across the Catholic community. So I just really want to thank people for the support that they have given to us in the past, because it's really been appreciated, and in fact goes towards these sorts of projects. So hopefully you can see that your wonderful donations and your wonderful support is being well utilised.
So thank you, Netty, and what we'll do is across the screen we'll have details for you on email, phone number, contact for CatholicCare, for Netty, and let's hope there are plenty in our community who can get behind this wonderful work of CatholicCare generally, and more specifically the urgent work for these refugees and asylum seekers looking to take their next step in our great city here as part of Melbourne, Australia.